Tens of millions of dollars being poured into arguably the most contentious race in the country, aside from the one that's playing out for the White House. TJ Cox and David Valadao have riddled the airwaves with nasty attack ads. Are they working? That's where we begin with our panel this week. Let's take roll call. President of the Fresno County and City Republican Women Federated, Diane Pierce, is with us. Also, Fresno City Council member and former congressional candidate for the 16th District, Esmeralda Soria. Thank you both for being here. How are you?
Doing well.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, I want to begin with the attack ads because these have been real nasty. It was the central focus of the debate, as you know, in hopes to get some clarity on the claims from each candidate. So, Esmeralda, I'll start with you. Are the attack ads actually working, or are voters just getting political fatigue from this?
You know, as someone that has ran before as a council candidate and then congressional candidate, I can tell you that majority of these negative ads are spewing lies. And people are tired of this kind of campaigning. I've spent, time talking about issues. That's what people want to hear. So I don't think that those negative ads will work. People are tired of it, tired of the nonsense that has been happening in the last 4 years, and it's really been driven by the president and just the negativity that has come out of the White House that has made it acceptable to continue to have these types of politics.
Well, Diane, your response to that, Esmeralda, really blaming the president for this one, but when you look at David Valadao, Congressman Cox right now, are they doing the attack ads as well because maybe it's hard for them to defend their record?
I think there are attack ads every single cycle, and it's for one reason. They do work. They wouldn't keep doing them if the data showed that people were genuinely disinterested in those types of ads. We don't have to agree with them. We can be tired of them, but certainly they didn't magically appear 4 years ago when President Trump took the White House. They've been going on for decades and much longer than that. So that's just kind of, a common talking point that the Democrats like to throw out there, blame Trump for everything. But there's no basis for it, of course. But I do think that there is validity to getting out negative information about your opponent that you want people to know. And so, again, they do it because it works.
And Esmeralda, I'll come back to you. So really, who did a better job, especially during the debate on Tuesday night, explaining and defending their record and really kind of stating the facts here? We didn't have a fact checker as me moderating. I couldn't fact check and moderate at the same time. So please let me know. What did you think about some of the facts or non-facts that were being slung around?
Unfortunately, a lot of time was spent on, accusations rather than substance. And that is really what is unfortunate, because I do believe that in a debate setting, people do want to hear folks talk about what is their plan to improve their lives. What are they going to do for our country? How is it that their representation going to impact my pocketbook and what is happening in my community? And, there was very little of that. However, I do believe that Congressman Cox has a proven track record of spending a lot of time in the district visiting the small rural communities, something that the former Congressman Valadao didn't do. That is why he lost last time. He was very disconnected. People want you to spend time in their community and stop spending time in Washington, D.C. and be so far removed from reality. And that's what people want to do. And I think that Congressman Cox has done an excellent job by talking about water, especially safe drinking water for all these rural communities. And people want to see someone that is going to work hard. He passed the CARES Act. That is why a lot of small rural cities in Fresno County actually have relief for small businesses and housing relief. Those are the things that people care about.
Esmeralda, I feel like you're on the debate stage already. Diane, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Congressman Valadao did an excellent job of explaining what he did accomplish in his 6 years there. And Congressman Cox, it's interesting, Esmeralda, Councilwoman talks about spending time in the district. When Valadao's in the district, he's actually in his home. And Congressman Cox has to bus himself into the district he represents because he doesn't even live there. So I think that's an interesting point as well. But I think the overall impression I got from the debate was it felt a lot like it did 2 years ago, where you have former Congressman Valadao, who's kind of the adult in the room, talking about substance, talking about the issues like Councilwoman Soria mentioned, that really is what people want to hear. And of the, dozen or so questions that were directly posed to Congressman Cox, I'm not sure he even answered 2 of them as far as substance goes. And the fact checkers that did do some of that homework following the debate were able to point out that of all of these bills that Congressman Cox supposedly has, sponsored and had all this success with, no, none of them ever came out of committee. So again, this success and track record for Congressman Cox is pretty abysmal. I think he's probably spent more time, or should be spending more time, in front of the ethics committee, because he has an unprecedented number of ethics complaints against him for all of his various business dealings and unidentified interests and things like that. So he's had a very busy 2 years, but it's been mostly trying to clean up his messes.
Well, hold on.
That is partisan politics, because if we look at who has filed all the ethic complaints, it's coming from the Republican Party. So for us to say that those ethic complaints are really, really valid, come on. We're talking about partisan politics again. This is what has really impacted America and is impacting American families. The fact is that people are so polarized that we can't even work together in today's age and actually solve the issues that are impacting families in the valley. People are struggling.
I want to move on, because we only got now we got about 90 seconds left. Do I need a mute button, a mute mic for you two as well? Because look, the presidential debate, I want to get to it here. This was more tame than Cox and Valadao. I'm a little shocked by this. It was the final presidential debate. So apparently the mute mic did work and everybody got their 2 minutes. Hardly any interruptions that I noticed. And Diana, I'll start with you. Did President Trump help his case, knowing that it's really boiling down to 4 states? And I'm talking about Arizona, Pennsylvania, Florida, and even Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. It's really boiling down to those states. Did he help himself?
Absolutely helped himself. And toward the end of the debate, where he actually got former Vice President Biden to admit that he wants to end the oil industry and fossil fuels, I think you're going to see some jumps in Trump's numbers in Pennsylvania coming out of that. It's a critical state. I think it may be the bellwether state for the entire election. And so, we had an hour and a half of debate, but it may all boil down to that 30 seconds or so where that admission finally came to light. We have the videos of Biden talking about ending fracking, and then again, the videos of him saying, as he did on the debate stage tonight, no, I'm not going to do that. He can't figure out where he is, let alone what his positions are on these things, but the videos bear out that he's been on both sides of virtually every issue.
Esmeralda, 30 seconds rebuttal, please.
I think that this is one of the best debates that Vice President Joe Biden had. He spoke directly to the American people. He stuck to really the work that he has done. And guess what? He admitted mistakes that he's made, and people want to hear that. We are humans at the end of the day. So we're not perfect and we will commit mistakes. But guess what? He is on the right side of history on wanting to advance issues that have impacted people of color. The fact of the matter is that we have a president that said that he's the least racist person in the room. Come on. What a joke and what an embarrassment.
I got to end it there. Hey, we're just getting started here. Things are starting to heat up. We're going to install the mute mic, I think, for you two. All right, coming up, the Republican challenger trying to unseat career politician Jim Casa decides to cancel their debate. Why he did it. Next.